Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I'd rather hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I probably should just pull up a chair and tell me more.
When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Hello, this is Jessie Sage. Welcome back to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. This is season 2, and I am so happy to be back with a whole new lineup of guests and an after party, and everything is very exciting. Emily and I have been working over the break to put together new colors, to work on the song, to work on the Patreon, and it is very, very nice to be back. Today, I'm really excited because we're talking to Ruby Lynne, but before we get into that, I wanted to offer up a few announcements. So let me see. The first one is that we are looking to have people support us in any way that they can. There are many different ways that you can support us, some of which include money and some that don't include money. So the first one is that you can support us financially on Patreon at patreon.com/sapiotextual. You can also just sponsor the show if you want to throw us a little bit of money for a shout out or for anything. That would be awesome. You could reach out to me at nothustlingpod@proton.me and we can talk about that. Also, if you go onto Spotify and leave us a 5-star rating and follow us, or Apple Pods and rate and review us and subscribe to us, that would be amazing. That obviously helps our algorithms. And even though this is season 2, we are still a new show. This is only, we're only 6 months in. So we could use all of the help that we can get to help boost our show and add listeners. The other thing that you could do is shout us out on social media. We are on Facebook as When We're Not Hustling. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Not Hustling Pod, the same as our email address. And I'm Jessie Sage at Sapiotextual, and all of that, it would be super helpful. We have decided that for the after parties every single month for the rest of season 2, which is going to go from July 1st until December, the first week of December, we are going to have a different after party guest for each month. So for July, my mom is coming back, and Emily, my mom, and I are going to be doing the after party. And then we are still deciding who's going to join us for August, September, October, and November. So we're excited for that. And and can't wait to share that news with you as well. Today, I'm going to be talking to Ruby Lynne, and Ruby Lynne, by way of introduction, is a GILF, a content creator, a webcam star, and award-nominated redhead. She's also the host of the Granny Panty podcast. That is very hard for me to say for some reason. And I was a guest on there one time. I really enjoy Ruby. She is a very fun spirit. She's 57 years old. She got into the industry after leaving a social work career. We talk about, even though this podcast isn't necessarily supposed to be about the work itself, what Ruby and I did was took the opportunity to talk about how the work has impacted us outside of work and vice versa, or in other words, like, what is the relationship between our work personas and our life outside of that? So I hope you enjoy the show, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Ruby. Hi, Ruby. It's so good to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on your brand new podcast.
Yeah, actually, I can't believe we've already made it through the first season. So this is going to be on season 2. So I guess it's not as brand new, but it's still pretty new.
Yeah, it feels new. And I love the episodes. You've had some amazing conversations.
It has been such like a blessing to me, because it's given me this opportunity to have, and I'm sure you feel like this on your show too, but conversations that you just don't have otherwise, and you get to know people on a different level. And I've really enjoyed that.
Yes, exactly. I learned something new from every guest I have.
I know. How far along are you on your pod? How many episodes have you done? A lot?
Oh boy. I started a year and a half ago now.
Okay.
So,
and you do it weekly, right?
I do it bi-weekly.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, about 30 something episodes, I think. I did last year. I started off weekly. So I actually did like 38 episodes in my first year.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. Podcasting is a lot of work.
It is. And it's a passion project for me because I make zero money off of it.
I make zero money off of mine too. I just do it because I like to. Although I'm lucky enough to have a sponsorship that pays Emily to produce the show, because I self-produced the first 2 shows that I did, and it was so much work. And I was just like, I won't do it again if I have to do all the editing and everything else, because it's just too much for one person, especially when you're running your business too.
Right. I actually taught Rex to edit.
Oh, nice.
So he's my podcast editor, and then I get it back and put the final touches on it and post it. So that took a load off.
Yeah. And are you and Rex still doing camming and clips together?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
We are.
Nice. Yeah. So for people who are unfamiliar with you, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Awesome. Well, I am Ruby Lynne. I'm a 57-year-old mature content creator, cam model from Portland, Oregon. I've been in this business about 4.5 years now. And for the first 2.5 years, worked a very vanilla day job as a social worker, case manager. Wow.
Yeah, I knew you did that. I didn't realize you did them concurrently. So the first 2.5 years, you were still working your day job?
Right. And then eventually the income from the fun job outpaced the burned out job. And so thankfully I got to retire from that in April of 2022.
Nice. Yeah. So when I talk to you, everyone who's familiar with the show knows that what we're looking to do here is to talk about what sex workers are doing outside of their work, what they're doing when they're not hustling. But you and I have had conversations about how hustling and the work that we've done has been incorporated into our lives too. So I thought that with this episode, we would kind of take a slightly different angle and talk a little bit about what you've learned about yourself, from doing this work. And the first thing that you mentioned to me that I would love to talk to you about is we had this funny overlapping experience where I wrote a article on pup play and you were like, oh my gosh, I just did my first pup play scene. So can you tell me a little bit about that scene and how that came about?
Yes. So I had been this one creator on Twitter kept coming across my timeline, and he's a faceless creator. He's into pup play. Bisexual guy. And I loved his aesthetic. I loved
Does he use like the pup masks?
Yeah, the pup mask, the collar. He even has a tail. Anal plug tail. And I
was going to ask, is it like a butt plug or is it like just, okay, it is. So he's hardcore.
He's hardcore. And it just drew me in. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And I have tried, throughout my 4.5 years, because I am more dominant personality, to be dominant. I'm not involved in BDSM at all.
Okay.
But I reached out to him and I said, hey, excuse me, I see you're going to be in Miami. I would love to shoot a scene with you. Some kind of like dominant scene.
So is most of your content fairly vanilla?
Yeah, it's boy, girl, solo.
Yeah.
I have some, like femdom, JOI.
Yeah. I did that too. And I don't even consider myself dominant, but many like custom requests were for like JOIs and things like that. So you just learn to do the stuff that people will pay you to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I have a dominant personality. I have, my whole life. So yeah, I reached out to him and I said, I'm thinking about the scene where if you're my good boy, you can bury the bone.
That's cute. I guess we should back up a little bit for the people who don't know much about pup play and just give like a very short definition. I actually didn't know that much about it until I had an editor who was like, will you write a story on pup play? And I interviewed a bunch of people in Pittsburgh where I live on the pet play community and learned that it's not just pups, it's also foxes and cats and all kinds of things. But I think that the pups are probably the most dominant in the scene. And there are people who like to get into like a pet headspace. And usually it has some BDSM context, like there's a handler, or in other words, like a dominant who trains them or tells them to sit or stay or play or do whatever. So that's actually really cute. I never would have thought of like burying a bone. So tell me how that scene went.
Well, what was interesting and kind of correlating it to having a more dominant personality my whole life, even before this business, is that I questioned really how dominant I was. And I say this because I find it really hard to be mean to nice people. And so we started. We started this scene like I had my riding crop and I was leading him up and down the hall of the hotel. And I wanted, I didn't even research pup play. I just went into this. I'm like, I'm going to be really dominant and I'm going to tell him what to do. And if he's naughty, I'm going to smack his butt and all this. And
was he on all fours with a collar?
Yeah. The whole thing. And I'm leading it up and down and I should be mean, but what am I doing? I'm tapping his bottom with the riding crop. And I'm like, come on, puppy, come on and be my good puppy. And my husband, who's my videographer, is behind the camera, just shaking his head going, oh, this is not a Dom scene.
You could be a nice Dom, though.
I was a nice Dom, but
because that's how I feel. Because I'm not a Dom at all. Like that is not I shouldn't say that. I probably do have like a dominant personality in a lot of ways, but I'm not like sexually dominant, and I'm certainly not like a dominatrix. Like that takes a lot of work for me to get into the headspace. Like I have to like think really hard. And I did night flirt for a lot of years. And even though that's not in person, like people really like Dom energy on night flirt. And I would have to try really hard. And I found that the only way that I could like really get into it and make it seem believable was if I was a very soft, like mommy dom or some sort of like nurturing dom where I was like, I know what you need. You know, that was the only one. I had to do it in this like nice and nurturing way because like I can't humiliate people. I just don't like have it in me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just like also inside of me going, this isn't very dominant when I'm all like, you're such a good boy. Here, have a treat. You're so good. I'll let you go down on me. But it was still a great scene. And I realized I can be mean in real life if something just like triggers me.
Yeah.
You know, like someone rude at the grocery store or someone rude in the car, you know, I mean, something I can just go bitch and like, you know, and just not let it go. But it's hard for me to be mean to nice people, even if they are paying me to do it. Yeah. I mean, I do like SPH, you know, small penis humiliation, CI, dirty talk. I feel like I've really perfected those, but the true, let me beat your, you know.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because my impression from my years in the industry is that the people who are into small penis humiliation never actually have a small penis.
Correct.
And I'm always like, I don't think I got it at the very beginning when I was new, and they would be like, mistress, can I send you a picture of my very small penis? It's, you know, or they would use some derogatory word or you know, diminutive word, and I'd be like, yeah, sure. And then they'd send it to me and I'd be like, I don't know, it looks normal to me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so interesting to me. I don't know what that's about, because there's been a couple of people who I'm like, yeah, you legitimately like have, I mean, there are such thing as micro penises and stuff. And there are some people who have feelings about that. I mean, I get that. But the vast majority of people who are into it just as like a humiliation fetish, like, are very average to above average.
I learned early on, you know, because I taught myself a lot of stuff by researching and Googling. And so even now, if I get a guy that comes in and wants like, you know, dick rate or something, I ask them. I kind of, and this comes from my social work background. So kind of relating that to outside of sex work, I'll be like, well, what do you think it's going to be rated at, you know, or what do you think about your cock? And that way I can figure out, like you said, I'm like, sometimes they'd send it, I'd be like, oh, damn, that's nice. And they're like, no, it's terrible.
I had the funniest thing happen one time. When I was doing a lot of online work, I had some guy reach out to me and he was like, if I pay you, will you look at 2 pictures and tell me which one is better? And I was like, okay, sure. And I had no idea what the context was. And to be honest, I don't really care that much, you know, like, so I have to like, I mean, most women, I don't think have like very strong opinions about the aesthetics of penises. So I'm just like, so I just have to like make up an answer, you know? So I see these 2 and I'm like, I don't know. But then I'm like, okay, let me think. And so I just pick one and I'm like, I like the one or the first one better. And he's like, why? And I was like, I don't know. Whatever. I came up with some reason why the first one was better than the second one. And then he was like, great. And I was like, why? And he's like, because the first one is mine and the second one I found in my girlfriend's phone. It's her ex-boyfriend. I was like, first, don't go through your girlfriend's phone. Second, like that would have been useful information. I just happened to get it right. But
oh my gosh,
yours would have worked better. Your kind of Socratic method would have worked better in that regard.
Yeah, it's pulling that information where they actually tell you what they expect. I like that.
I found that when I was a phone sex operator, that was the easiest thing to do, because all you would have to say is like, you just have to, especially in Dom sort of situations, you extract the information and then you tell them, you just give it back to them.
Yeah.
That's it.
You repeat what they say.
Exactly. Just verbatim, just exactly what they say.
Motivational interviewing, whoever's listening, if you're not familiar with motivational interviewing, it's huge in the, case management industry just.
So what is it? What are the steps of motivational interviewing?
Yeah. So motivational interviewing is really letting the other person provide the information, and a lot of it is reflection back to them. And so an example would be like, as a case manager, I'd have someone that says, yeah, this year I want to quit smoking. Okay, that's great. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, I want to start right now, give me something, or 1 is, I'm just kind of thinking about, where are you on the scale?
Yeah.
And, so whatever they say, they could say, oh, I'm a 4, then, well, why did you pick 4 as opposed to like 8?
Right. And then they just provide you with everything. Yeah. That's what I feel like so much of online sex work is like, let me figure out by you telling me exactly what you want, what it is that you want. And usually they'll provide all of the information for you if you ask. And just my partner PJ used to make fun of me when I did a lot of phone sex and I did it from home, because they would always say, you sound like, it's funny that you say this, because they would say to me, you make phone sex sound like you're giving people job interviews. But it's almost like exactly what it is, because especially when you're doing things like by the minute like that, I'm trying to figure out, like, first of all, what they want, but then also like how to keep the conversation going. So I'm like, oh, you think that's hot? When was the first time you thought that was hot? Right. You remember, have you done this in real life, or is it just a fantasy? Why haven't you done it in real life? What are you thinking about? When you think about that, are you nervous? Are you excited? What does excited look like for you? I just ask like a million questions until I can hone in on like, what is it that we're talking about?
Right. And in the process, they feel heard too.
Yeah. Because I think that's actually one of the biggest motivators. People want to feel heard.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, okay. So let's go back to this idea of like dominance. So do you feel like you didn't realize that you can only be dominant in certain sets of circumstances? Was that like new to you?
Yeah, that was kind of an epiphany. Was that, I can do it. Here's what I think the thing is that we shot a scene together. We were collaborating. So it was a content trade versus the other person paying me to be mean to them. Yeah. And I made that correlation is like, I can be mean to someone who deserves it in real life, Yeah. But really, I have a hard time humiliating a nice person.
Especially because when you're looking at it like on the collaboration level, like you two are actually equals in that regard.
Right.
Like you're going into it with the same thing. You're trying to come out of it with the same thing, like a scene. You are doing a trade for trade. So it's not like you actually are more in charge or whatever, so I think it's like hard to set up a power dynamic when the power dynamic is one of equality. Yeah.
It was just funny. I just cracked up at myself though, because I was like, okay, here you go. Good puppy. Let's go. It's just like,
what do you think? Did you guys talk about it afterward?
Yeah, we did talk about it. It was funny.
Yeah. What was his perspective?
He's done all kinds of different scenes.
Yeah.
But he said that happens quite often. Like someone will reach out to him and want to do like this really BDSM scene. And funny enough, he is a professor at university. So, which is also why he stays faceless.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. And so, he's intelligent. I felt like I was intelligent. We're having this conversation about how can I be meaner to you?
Have there been things that you've done as Ruby Lynne that have shaped your sex life or your desires in your regular life that you hadn't really encountered before you started this work?
Yeah, I wouldn't say in the sex life, because Rex and I were in the swing lifestyle since we met, and we've been together 17 years. So in that realm, we had, experienced a lot of things, but I think, and like I told you when we were talking about the episode, Ruby and who my government name and in personality or in life have merged, and they're really like one and the same. And where the Ruby affects, the daily personal life is that I used to really care about what people think. And even as I'd aged, people can say, oh, when I turned 50, my give a F's all went away. Yes, to some degree, but I still believe we're human, and there is a part of us that still cares what at least certain people think.
Yeah.
And an experience that I have had as Ruby was, being very open with what I'm doing and that kind of thing, and how you quickly find out who doesn't love you unconditionally.
Yeah.
And so that has been interesting to see how the personal life people couldn't handle like the freedom that I have. Not only, it wasn't even all about doing sex work in front of a camera and being out naked on the internet, but more like you're doing what you want to do and you're happy doing it. So that has been almost hard at some point to kind of comprehend. It's getting better.
Yeah.
I would say for sure now.
Were there people that you were really surprised couldn't handle that you would have assumed could?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That, and also like, I think I truly do care less about what people think now. Even though I said it before, it wasn't really true. To some respect. And losing my, I've been pretty open about my son, disowned me. And that hurt really deep.
Yeah.
But healing from that, thank God for therapists. I love my therapist. Is really figuring out where that came from, and that kind of thing, is that now I really do pretty much not really care. So that's been an interesting thing to analyze for me.
Yeah. What do you think helped you in that process of like healing from that? I mean, besides therapy, but like, or what part of therapy do you think was helpful in kind of reframing that situation for you?
It was really figuring out that if someone can't accept you for what you are, then you really don't want to make space for them in your life.
Yeah.
That's kind of where that came from me. Now, that's not to say with my son, we've had some progress, very little progress lately. So I'm super excited about that. Just overjoyed for that, but also like taking it very slow. Now I really don't, it doesn't bother me what people think. I have very thick skin.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that a lot of that came to me through this work, especially in the, like, not even necessarily the work, but like you say, everything that goes on around it, like becoming a public figure actually is for me, like where you need to learn to take in what feeds you and kind of put a wall around yourself about the things that don't, because there's so many people who are mad that you are living the life that you want to live, are mad that like, I don't know what kind of criticism you get, but like, maybe I could imagine like, why is somebody who's in their 50s like doing this? They shouldn't be doing this, or I'm 46, but like I get a little bit of that. I get more of like, you don't look like a porn star. You're too like big, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Fill in the blank, right?
Just whatever. Yeah. Like whatever. But then the thing that's like been so transformational for me in that regard is that I came to learn that like the people who hold those opinions don't have any bearing on my actual life,
Yes.
on my income, on anything, and I think I remember hearing you say this one time where you were like, I don't mind the haters. They just boost me algorithmically, and
Yes.
you like learn that it doesn't matter. Those people don't matter. They're sitting there by themselves, like hating on a stranger they don't know.
Right.
And for every one of those, there's more people that want to be supportive, that like the fact that you and I and everybody else who's just living their lives or have decided to live their lives according to their own conscience and their own ethical framework. And all the rest of it is just kind of distracting bullshit.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know if it was for you, but it is definitely a process to get there though. Like I locally have someone, and she's been on OnlyFans and off OnlyFans, and she's on social media, and she did full service work for a long time. And like the comments on social media, like really destroy her, like mentally, like she just can't do it. And so her and I have conversations, and of course, I love it. I've got TikTok right now that's going crazy. And I'll tell you what, it has triggered men like no other. And my new slogan, so I've started this, it came to me, is that I'm not your average grandma, I'm better. And I tell you what, I made, so I've been making social media, that's like my new, thing, my slogan.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
And, it's also a little bit tongue in cheek. It's like, I have nothing against younger women. Absolutely not. Women should be supporting women. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But, and it's not the women in my TikTok making the comments, it's the men. And so I love it. Like I think of my friend, and she would just be like, probably in bed, locked in a dark room, of some of these comments. Instead, I'm like, why you mad, bro?
Yeah.
Why you mad? And then, and then one guy, is referencing to age means you've been with more people. Why do you want someone used up,
Oh my God.
And then, I'm like, well, my bank account would disagree with you, and just, I love it. It's hilarious.
Well, it's also subversive.
Yeah.
Like, it's political, it's subversive. It's a way to like make people reimagine what it means to be a woman in any particular category that you're in, and I think that there's something really powerful about that. I get a ton of women who write to me, who like leave me messages on Instagram or, DM me when I've written an article. And for a little while, I found this like surprising, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. But I would write an article about whatever, puppy play, nothing related to my body at all, and women would write to me and be like, oh my gosh, I love that you have a voice and you have a body that looks like mine, and I would be like, wait, am I talking about my body in this article? I'll go back and like look, and I'll be like, no, they're just like, you are a person who is unashamed to live in the world. And that makes me feel more powerful, and there's those sorts of comments are the ones that have made me be like, you know what? All of that other noise doesn't matter. We are doing something for the people who our work matters to, it matters. And all of the rest of that, as far as I'm concerned, they can just keep scrolling. They don't have to like engage with me.
Right.
They do. So, I don't know why, but they don't have to. They can just do something else.
Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
But yeah, I mean, that's really kind of all of this has been a big part. And like I said, like therapy, I had a lot of and so to talk more on the personal side, you know, like how does my work transfer over actually? So vice versa, the work transferring to personal life is that, you know, running my own business has been tough. I'm not going to lie. You know, there's just different things. I recently got diagnosed for the second time, but actually treated for ADHD. You know, for months I'd sit here at my computer and work hard, quote unquote, but at the end of the day, I didn't get shit done. I'm like, what? You know,
and then to get a lot of things done.
Yeah. What is that? Things in mirror are not as they appear or something like that. But going into therapy, I forced myself. I had a big meltdown in December of 2023. You know, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't good. And I was like, I need to figure out how my childhood traumas are showing up in my life now. You know, even in my business, like what am I? And so I found an amazing therapist online, all telehealth.
Oh, nice. Mine is that way too. I mean, she lives in my not neighborhood, but city. But after COVID, we started doing telehealth.
Yeah. And I just got lucky to find her. I always tell her that, but she has helped me like really dissect things, you know, and I'm very blessed. I did not experience any sexual trauma or assault as a child, but other things like, you know, neglectful stuff. And so anyway, she, you know, there's like, I can give you a correlation. I'd love to give you an example is that I grew up very, very poor. Very poor. And so money means a lot to me. Like money equals happiness, security, status, you know, everything because I never had it. So when I have a not so great month in my income, in my business, like it just destroys me. Like I'm just like neurotic almost, you know?
So funny that you say that because I also grew up without any money, and I've had some like conflicts with my partner because they didn't have that sort of economic insecurity, and they've accused me of like, I mean, I'm not saying this in a negative way about them, but like of liking bougie things or, you know, and I'm like, yeah, it is important to me to be able to go have like filet mignon. And I know that that sounds dumb to you or bougie or like a waste of money, but like the freedom to be able to like not eat mac and cheese for dinner, but to eat something like delicious feels important to me. And I think that, and I experienced the same thing. Like I am way less concerned about Twitter trolls than I am about like, if, for example, the first of the month comes around and I haven't started booking my calendar yet. And I look at it and I'm like, my career is over. I have nobody like booked. And PJ jokes and is like, you say this every month and every month it's fine. People start booking after they like pay, you know, and they do. And every month is fine. I mean, some months are way better than other ones, obviously, because that's how sex work goes. But I also have this tendency to panic and be like, it's over. My career's done. I got to go get a job. And then I'm like, no, I think it's fine, actually.
Yeah. And, you know, even to the difference of you and I, so I had this mindset that I didn't deserve filet mignon because I hadn't worked hard enough. I didn't have enough money saved or, you know, this kind of thing. And so always looking at, the world from lack, I guess you'd say.
Scarcity mindset.
Yeah. So anyway, that therapy has helped me in my personal life because my partner didn't grow up with the lack that I had. And money isn't important to him. He says, I make money to go spend money, you know, whether that's on my mortgage, you know, a car or whatever, where, you know, he didn't have to worry about how to get deodorant, you know, or feminine products, you know, that kind of thing. And so we've really had I don't want to call it a conflict, but just a struggle in how we view.
Well, marriage is complicated. When you start to like combine your finances and the way that you want to live your life. And, you know, there's a lot of things to consider. And part of those is your background and what you're coming in with. And it's so interesting. So we've been doing this therapy called imago therapy. I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
It's basically a couples, there are relational therapy. So it could, I think it's often used for couples, but you could do it, with somebody else in your life that you're struggling with. And it's very scripted. There's a sender and a receiver. So the sender is like, the way that I feel about this thing that happened is this, and then they answer it. So the therapist will give a script, and then you're supposed to, as the receiver, repeat it back, and then ultimately say like, this makes sense to me because, to kind of put yourself in the headspace of the other person. And and it's been really, really helpful for us to get away from our own perspective and like into the perspective of each other, and but one of the things that they said, and this is why I was thinking about this, is our therapist was like, what we say in Imago is that 20% of the conflict that you're having is about the conflict that you're having, and 80% of it is what you're bringing into it from your childhood, his childhood, different types of experiences. And I was like, that seems like a crazy ratio, but it's probably true. You're thinking about how you're spending money, not because of like where you are now, but because of where you've been.
Right. Yeah. So that's been a real epiphany for me, though, to figure out too, how it was affecting my business.
Yeah.
Because in December, when I had my meltdown, I thought, if I don't figure this out, the rest of my life, I'm going to be miserable. I'm always going to be chasing the next thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, you look at the first of the month. Jessie, I do that every month. I go, I'm not going to be able to pay myself this month. I just can't take a salary because we didn't make enough.
PJ will be like, it's the first.
Yeah.
Like, maybe give it a couple days. I hate the first of the month because I'm not a salaried person who gets paid. Instead, I'm like, I have an empty calendar. This is going to be a disaster.
So we're very similar. Yeah. I'm enjoying finding this out because I think you're amazing. So I'm glad we have some of the same things going.
Have you read Lola Davina's? I know she has that Thriving in Sex Work book that was really popular, but then she did a follow-up on money. Have you read that?
No, I have not.
You would like that because what she does is she read like a ton of self-help financial books before she wrote it, and then like translated that all to like sex work businesses. But what she does is not just talk about like, this is how you should put money in savings, but instead like talks about what kind of like financial traumas we have, and how those impact the way that we make choices and maybe our anxiety around money. And her whole thing in the book is that she says that, sex workers deserve to feel financially secure, to retire at some point, to do like all of the things that non-self-employed people do. But a lot of the barriers to that are emotional barrier. So like, how can we break down how we're thinking about our financial life? And I have to say that I'm, not somebody that's good at financial planning. I'm very concerned about making enough money to cover things, less concerned about like, what are the long-term, I need to get better at that. But, I also had a finance wrecking divorce that I've been like trying to dig myself out of for a very long time. So it's been like, yeah, great, I make money now. Okay, well, it all goes to plugging the dams that were created, So, I mean, I'm talking a lot, but all of this to say, I think you would really like the book because it talks a lot about these like associations that we have with money and how they can create barriers for us and our businesses, actually.
I'm literally going to order it after we hang up.
Yeah, it's really good. And she's a good writer. So, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed her first book that you mentioned.
I think she's doing something on relationships now, being like a sex worker in a relationship or like a follow-up book. But so, I mean, I think that's really interesting. So do you feel like Is it being self-employed, do you think, that you had to kind of figure out, like, coming out of social work? Because I'm assuming you worked very differently when you were a social worker.
Yeah. Even when I had a full-time job, and I'll tell you, this is another how the the reason I got into sex work was because I didn't make a lot of money as a social worker. And I also worked for like the Medicaid system. So even, lower income, and Rex is a mechanic. So, two very normal vanilla jobs. And the reason I got in is because we didn't have enough money, or in my head, we weren't saving enough money to travel. And I am a travel bug. Like that's my dream, to travel. And so, like I've talked about many times on many shows, came across this post in a Facebook group about selling your dirty panties. And I'm like, oh, I can make extra money. And so even as a employed person, I still always felt like there was never enough.
Yeah. Did it feel like a leap to you when you left your job? When you were like, I'm just going to do sex work?
What's funny about that is that I felt very confident. And I think that's why it was a good decision. Like I felt like it was a good decision. Yeah. We had planned. I'm a tracker. I am very planning, money planning. I have spreadsheets, you name it. Yeah. And at the time I quit, I was really viral on social media and, in the UK. And so it was awesome. It was great. And I had no worries. I, made double my salary. Yeah. And it didn't really hit me until last September, 2023. So a year and a half later, when I lost my most viral Instagram account.
Oh yeah.
And and I've been very transparent about it. My income went down 50%, if not more.
That's a lot.
No, it was a lot. And that's what threw me into my depression. And
it makes you realize how precarious things are.
Yeah. And I always say that was at the moment, it scared the shit out of me. I own my own business, and it can be pulled out, the rug can be pulled out at any moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never lost an Instagram account or any social. I lost my Twitter, but it got hacked. I got it back. It was fine. But I haven't lost a social media account like that, but I've lost big clients where you're like, that's 50% of my income, either because life circumstances came up for them, or they moved, or something happened. And it's a really difficult balance, because when you're doing, most sex workers that I know make the majority of their money from a very small percentage of their clients.
That is true.
And even if we have like a broad base or whatever, broad reach, still like you'll have 2 or 3 people that are like, or I have no idea how your business runs, but like it is a small percentage of the overall people that like pay the majority of your bills, And so I think that used to freak me out more, because I'd be like, oh my gosh, now I have to I just lost a huge chunk of money because this person moved, or this person lost their job, or, whatever happened, that person's life circumstances changed. Now mine have changed, and that's not good. But I've actually realized, and I think it just took me time to realize that when voids open up, something comes in and fills them,
You are so right. And literally, I have therapy every Monday morning. Just talked to my therapist about this morning, because Rex and I have had a contract with a specific cam company for, 2.5 years or something. Yeah. And we just got a letter saying that they're going to terminate our contract for, whatever reason. And I know that it's probably a budget issue. Yeah. And so, because I've been going through all this therapy about dealing with things that are disappointing, or, that happened like last Wednesday. And for about 2 hours, I was pissed off, right? Like there's another $2,000 a month gone. Right. And then I was like, no, what have I learned here over this,
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is just going to free me up to now pursue or spend more time with XCAM sites,
Yeah.
that are actually going to build my business.
Yeah. Right. Right. And that's what I've done too, is like, it's hard with like, especially hard with in-person work, because you lose a client and you're like, oh, this is somebody I've gotten used to having in my life. I have some sort of like affection for. Not only that, but now there's this double thing of like, now this person's disappeared and my money's disappeared. And what am I going to do now? But then also like, there's a way that you're like, okay, now I've put a ton of time and energy into this. Now let me put some time and energy into other things. And those voids fill. They do.
Yes.
It might not be like immediate, but because I would like just immediacy, but there's ebb and flow, and I think that that's okay. And a lot of times things come back, like I've had that situation with clients where their life circumstances changed or relationships changed or whatever, and they've gone away, which is another thing. It's not just job and money. It's also wherever they are in their relationships. And then they often come back, and, and I think, but even when they don't, something else comes along, so.
Right.
But those are hard waves to ride if you hang on too tight.
Yeah. And I'm looking back, the first time that happened was on cam. So our first year, maybe year and a half, we had a gentleman who was a super fan, and he spent a significant amount of money on us. I won't even tell you how much. It was crazy. And we also became
so great. Yeah. And they also encourage other people to spend money.
Yes.
That's the other thing too. Yeah.
And, we actually became friends with him. Like
nice.
we've, flown and met. Yeah. He just became a friend.
Yeah.
Well, he got a girlfriend.
Yeah. That happens.
Disappeared. And yeah, that was the first time, really, it was like, oh yeah, nothing's a guarantee. I mean, it in your head, but still.
I know, but sometimes it just feels like you get very comfortable in that. And you're right, that happens. They get a girlfriend. Sometimes they get a divorce, and that changes things. Yeah. Where like this was filling a void because they didn't want to. They were in their marriage and maybe it was sexless or whatever. And then they get a divorce, and then suddenly everything changes. Now they're open. Now they can date. Now they have different outlets, and so any big life change, like, oh, you're changing your job. Oh, you're getting married. Oh, you're getting divorced.
Right.
So many things.
Everybody's in crisis.
Yeah. It has all these like implications. And I don't mean to say that at all. Like I'm reticent about saying that so explicitly, because I feel like it's going to come across as if like I only think of these like of my clients in my life as like a paycheck, but there's very real like relationships, but also this is how I make my living.
Yeah.
And, like there's a reality to that too.
Absolutely. I mean, in any business, you either have a product or a service that you exchange for funds. It doesn't mean you don't love your customer.
Right. Yeah.
Not love, but enjoy them or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
right. Appreciate them. Also just as people, not just as paychecks, like I feel like you said about your guests, I often also feel that way about clients. Like I've learned a lot through, my clients, and that isn't true about like cam clients too, or phone sex clients. I had phone sex. When I went up to New York to do my Holy Hour book launch, it was so amazing because somebody who was a phone sex client of mine from like years ago, who I'd never met in person, showed up and was like, I'm so-and-so. And I was like, oh my gosh.
That's so cool.
It was very cool. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have to wrap up, but we like to end things with 3 questions. So what are you reading?
What am I reading?
You're going to read Lola's book.
I'm going to read Lola's book. I don't have a book that I'm currently reading. Okay. So I'm in between books. So yeah, I'm definitely going to buy her book though.
Okay, that sounds good. And what do you listen to? Podcast, music?
I listen to it all. I love podcasts. I listen to yours, of course.
Oh, thank you.
It's so good. Love the episode with PJ.
Oh, thank you.
I have a couple podcasts that I pop in and out of, but music is a huge thing of importance in my life. It can make your attitude, or it can bring you up if you're feeling down, but I listen to everything. If you saw my playlist, Apple Music playlist, it is literally everything from country to lo-fi rap.
Wow, that's amazing. And what are you excited about?
I am excited right now about an upcoming trip I have. I leave Friday. I'm going with a friend to the Alt Porn Awards. I've never been there.
Where is that?
The exciting thing is I'm going there with no schedule. So this is all about her. She asked me to go as her friend, and I have no appointments, no shoots, no nothing. So I'm going to go and be her support. And I'm really excited. And then I go from Vegas straight to LA, where I have a couple studio shoots. So I'm really excited about that.
Going into mainstream?
I'm trying to do more studio work. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's neat. And we usually end here, but I just want to ask you, because we have a couple of minutes. So I'm so interested in this because I feel very much similar to you in the sense that, like, I am not an actor. My sex work persona is just me. But I do think that I've changed in the many years that I've been in the industry. And I think that in some ways my persona has almost been like an aspirational version of me that I've grown into. And I was wondering who you feel how you feel like being Ruby has helped you become who you are, or something like that. I'm just curious of a final thought on the integration of those things.
Yeah, I would say that Ruby is the person I always dreamt about being. So, even when I was late in teenage years, God knows why. Well, probably because I was overweight and ugly, but I wanted to be a stripper. I loved sex. I loved boys. I loved everything. But I feel like at this point in time, Ruby is what no one expected or expected me to be, I guess you'd say. So I always lived my life by making everyone else happy.
Yeah.
I went to college. I did this. I was, this kind of, worked for the state, worked in social work. Yeah. And really, I'm doing this job because I freaking want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that's amazing. Yeah. It's so great. And it's so great to have the opportunity to be exactly who you want to be.
Yes. Yeah. It's very amazing.
Okay. So where can people find you?
You can find me. You can go to RubyLynne.com. It has, all things Ruby.
Lynne, right?
Yes.
Okay.
RubyLynne. So RubyLynne.com has all the things Ruby. We'll make it easy.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Jessie. It was so fun.
It was really fun. Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster and the music is by Benjamin J. Beninati. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NotHustlingPod. To support the show and get sneak peeks, please go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. For more information about our show and what we do here, please visit our website at nothustling.com. Signing off. Have a great week.